Hello, everyone. Welcome again to In Sarah's Tent. And I'm pleased to have Nancy here with me this evening. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Sandy.
We are continuing our story of Abraham, or at this point, he's still Abram, and his wife Sarai, and their travels. And tonight we will be reading in Genesis chapter 12, verses 8 through 20. So, Nancy, if you would like to read that, and then we'll have some discussion.
All right. So, Genesis 12, starting with verse 8. He relocated from there to the mountain east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And he built there an altar to Hashem, and he called out in the name of Hashem. Then Avram journeyed on, continuing to journey toward the south. There was a famine in the land, and Abram descended to Egypt to sojourn there, for severe was the famine in the land. And it occurred as he drew close to entering into Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, "Indeed, now I have known that a woman of beautiful appearance are you. And it shall be when they will see you, the Egyptians, and they will say, 'His wife this is.' Then they will kill me, while you they will keep alive. Say, please, that my sister you are, so that it may go well with me for your sake, and remain alive, may my soul, on account of you." But it happened at the entry of Avram into Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman, that beautiful was she to the utmost. When see her the officials did of Pharaoh, they praised her as worthy for Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to the palace of Pharaoh. And for Avram, it went well for her sake, and there belonged to him sheep, cattle, donkeys, slaves, and maidservants, female donkeys, and camels. But Hashem afflicted Pharaoh with plagues that were severe, along with his household, over the matter of Sarai, his wife, the wife of Abram. Pharaoh called Avram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that your wife is she? Why did you say, 'My sister is she,' so that I took her for me as a wife? Now, here is your wife, take her and go." And command concerning him did Pharaoh to his men, and they sent away him and his wife and all that was with him.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. There's a lot in those few verses. Some puzzling actions on Abram's part, kind of puzzling. We're looking at it in 21st century eyes. It looks a little strange what he did. So we'll delve into that a little later. But first of all, I'd like to look at verses 8 and 9. We're continuing his journeys, and he went to east of Bethel and pitched his tent. And I was talking with my Hebrew teacher a few months ago when we were reading this, and he pointed out that the word where it's translated, he pitched his tent, but the word a hollow actually, and it actually ends with a hey, which indicates feminine ending. So if you'll bear with me just for a few minutes, we will have a little short Hebrew lesson here. So it's translated his tent, even though the word ends with a feminine. And he told me, and then I confirmed with him earlier in the week because I wanted to make sure I remembered it correctly before we talked about it. And it can be translated her tent. And he said that would indicate Abram's kindness, that he pitched Sarah's tent before he pitched his own. He was looking after her before himself. But he also said it can be used as his tent also, because it's, okay, Nancy, you may have to help me pronounce this word. It's a cricative. Is that the way?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Which means the word is spelled one way but pronounced another way. So he said it's perfectly okay. Some translators will go with his tent because of that, and some will say her tent because it has the feminine ending. I like to go with the feminine ending side of it and look at it as his kindnesses toward Sarah, that he made sure she was taken care of first.
I like that. And so as we are in Sarah's tent, we finally are meeting Sarah. And this could be her tent that
Yes.
he's talking about, that we base our podcast on, is in Sarah's tent. And this could be that he pitched her tent. So he pitched this tent that we are using as our podcast name.
I like that. That's good. We are finally actually in Sarah's tent.
Right, exactly.
Good. Did you have anything else on that about his travels? And I noticed he built an altar. That seems to be a pattern with him.
Yes, yes. So he was in Shechem last week in our last episode, and now he's moving on and he's traveling and pitching tents and setting up altars. I think there's a difference in the way Avram here, how he treats the land. Even though Hashem has said this land will be to your descendants, he doesn't claim it. He doesn't set up a city. He doesn't build a house. He still lives in tents, which I think is a very humble way of accepting this promise.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what significance do you see that he seems to be so careful about an altar? Is it like a way of thanking God, honoring God? Just seems to be his, and we see it later with his descendants. They pit wherever they are, they seem to make an altar, and he's here at Bethel, and we know that's an important place for Jacob later at Bethel, and he builds an altar there. So it just seems to be an important thing for them to do.
Yes, and if you compare it to the people of the Tower of Babel, they built their quote unquote altar for themselves. They built this tower for themselves. And here Avram is building an altar for Hashem. So I think that that's a difference in attitude, again, between that generation and Avram.
Yeah, good comparison there. Well, I was noticing also in verse 10, it says, there was a famine in the land, and Abram descended to Egypt to sojourn there, for severe was the famine in the land. That's another recurring theme as we go through the Tanakh or the Torah. Famine. It seems to happen, a famine in the land, the land, I think, typically usually refers to Canaan. And it always, I won't say always, but we see a pattern. There's a famine in the land of Canaan, and they go to Egypt. Why does Egypt seem to be spared the famine? I know later with Joseph, there was the 7 years of good, and then they had 7 years of famine. But more than once, we see there's a famine where Abram is, or one of his descendants, but Egypt seems to be the place to go. I wonder why Egypt? Why does Egypt seem to be spared?
Well, that's a good question. I think that it's the geography. I think that um, Egypt is not dependent on rain. So, like Canaan and other countries are dependent on rain for their crops, and Egypt is not. But yeah, Egypt seems to be the go-to place anytime there's a famine.
Yeah.
Egypt, except for the 7 years when we get to the story of Joseph,
Hmm.
Egypt seems to be spared from famine.
Right. And the 7 years with Joseph, that was sort of a whole separate plan that was working there to, which we'll get into that eventually. We'll get there
Eventually.
eventually. In our own good time, we will find our way there. So yeah, and I think it's interesting too that Abram descended to Egypt. I think there's probably some very spiritual significance going down to Egypt. And I think we've seen that phrase, or we'll see that phrase later. It's descending to Egypt. It's like it's lesser. You're going from a more elevated place to a lesser place. I don't know if that's a fair description of that, but I think there's something significant that it says they descended to Egypt.
I think you're right. I think that every time they use the word descend, that it does have a spiritual component. In the story of Jonah and the great fish,
Mm-hmm.
that word is used several times. He descends to the to the boat, and then to the
Mm.
belly of the boat, and then down to the bottom of the ocean. So in that story, Jonah has several tiered descent journey. And I do think that has some spiritual component to it as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I think that we should be on the lookout every time we see that word to see if there's kind of a spiritual component to it.
Right. That's a good analogy too, bringing in Jonah, and yeah, and then one more, he descended into the big fish,
Yes,
descended
yes.
into that. So yeah, that's a. I'm glad you brought that up. I had not thought of that. It's good. Let's see. Anything else on that verse, or move on to the next section, 11 through 14.
Yeah, 11, 12, and 13 is an odd conversation, I
Yes.
think,
Yes.
between Avram and Sarai, where he asks her to say that she's his sister.
Right.
So, okay, my first thought is that a common practice in Egypt or just in the world in general that if they find a beautiful woman who happens to be married, it's okay to kill the husband? Murder is okay, but adultery is not. They would rather kill the husband and then take the
Mm-hmm.
wife rather than commit adultery. It just seems to me like a warped sense of right and wrong.
I agree with you, and I've actually heard in a lecture that that's exactly the attitude of the Egyptians. Adultery was really forbidden. That was just no. That's just as immoral as they were. That's kind of where they drew the line. No adultery. So it was not uncommon for them to kill the husband. That would be okay. Then they could take the wife and it wouldn't be adultery. And it is very odd, but yeah, you brought that up, and I have heard that in a lecture before. It is strange. But the other thing that has puzzled me with this episode is, did Abraham lie? We've got a righteous man, but is he lying here? Is saying that Sarai is his sister? That's maybe something we need to look at a little bit. Is it sometimes okay to tell a lie? But was
Ooh,
he, first of all, was he lying? What do you think? Was this
I
a lie?
think I think Sarai was his niece.
Yes.
I don't think she was his sister.
No, she was not.
However, I have heard references calling relatives brother when they're not brothers. They're more like cousins, or some other male relative as a brother. So maybe it would be the same with a female relative. Maybe it was generally accepted to call the female relative sister, even though they weren't technically brother and sister.
Well, and there's commentary here in our Chumash that actually supports what you just said, and I'll take a couple of minutes to read it. It says Abraham claimed that Sarah was his sister. Could Abraham have told an outright lie to say she was his sister if she really was his niece? And it references chapter 11:29. The sages explained that a man often refers to his relative as his sister. That's in Midrash Gadol. Though Abraham thought that this ruse would protect Sarah as well as himself, Ramban comments that it was a great sin for him to put her in danger. Not that the ruse, nor was the ruse effective against Pharaoh, the only person who did not need to negotiate for Abraham's sister and who would not be so publicly immoral as to kill Abraham to take his wife. So I think that does support your comment that it was common that you would call whatever relative, a niece, a cousin, a female cousin or niece, as a sister. So in that sense, no, he wasn't lying. But I do think it's interesting there that they kind of bring criticism on Abraham for even doing this, that he actually put Sarah in danger by doing this.
So maybe he was thinking that if they thought she was his brother, they would leave her alone and negotiate for how much Abraham wanted as a price for his sister, and he would never get to that point of actually making that deal. Maybe was his plan to get out of there before anybody tried to marry her?
Oh, that's a good question, and I think we'll delve a little more into that in the next couple of verses, where she's they notice how beautiful she is and take her. One other point before we move on from this is talking about did he tell a lie? We've learned from the rabbis that Abraham feared for his life at this point, that they might kill him to take her. And we've learned from the rabbis that if it's to save your life or save a life, it's okay to lie. So I think that might be another way to look at it there. That he did fear for, and I think he had legitimate reason to fear for his life in that situation. So
Right. If this was a common practice in Egypt,
yes,
that they would kill the husbands, then yes, that would put his life in danger.
right. In verse 15, there's a phrase that kind of caught my eye. Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that backing up a couple of verses that Abraham says to Sarah, I've known that you're a beautiful woman. And it's like maybe I almost get the impression, this is just speculation, that he maybe had never told her that before. And now he says, I've always known you were beautiful. And at this point, how old? I mean, they're what we would consider elderly. Isaac hasn't been born yet. So they're, I guess maybe, I don't know how old they are, but they're not young people. But she's still obviously very beautiful. And I think it's just, it's like he's telling her, I think it's important to compliment our spouses or people who are important to us.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I thought it was a very sweet thing that he said there, that she was beautiful. And then moving on into the next verse, let's see, verse 15, that bears it out. It seems like as soon as they get into Egypt, she's attracted attention. I don't know if it says the officials, I don't know if they had to go through something like customs coming into the country, like, we leave the country, we come back through customs. Must have been some kind of official entry into the land, because it says the officials noticed her, and they praised her and thought she would be worthy for Pharaoh, and the woman was taken. And I kind of zeroed in on that word taken. Does that almost makes me, it almost sounds like she was kidnapped. Maybe it was,
Yes.
do you get the idea that maybe it was against her will? To be taken, to me, indicates against my will.
Well, I would think, yes. I would think that she would not really want to go willingly.
Right.
She probably wanted to stay under the protection of Avram.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And then in verse 16, she's been taken to Pharaoh's palace. And I'd like your thoughts on verse 16, Nancy, where it says, and for Abram, and this is after she's been taken to the palace, and for Abram, it went well for her sake. And then it lists all the possessions that he has. So what does it mean? What do you think it means? It went well for Abram for her sake.
I think it's because of her. That's what I think. I,
Okay.
I think that, yeah, they gave him gifts. They gave him lots of gifts as
Maybe to impress her, like, oh, we're taking care of your brother, so to speak. Maybe make her more at ease with being there, or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, trying, yeah. It seems almost like a bribe,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm not really sure exactly what the custom was. Apparently, the it seems like from this that the custom was to give the brother a whole bunch of gifts in
Mm-hmm.
exchange for his sister, that they
And
took his sister.
yeah, and there is again something here in our commentary, in our Humash. It said Abraham did accept lavish gifts from Pharaoh in the context of Abraham's claim that Sarah was his sister, and the implication that he would allow her to marry a suitable person. Abraham had no choice. Had he refused gifts, he would have aroused Pharaoh's suspicions. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's almost like we're getting deeper and deeper into this well. How are you
Yeah,
going to get out now?
it's
How
kind
is
of
this
like,
going to end?
oh, what a wicked web we weave when
Yeah,
first we practice
tangled
to
web.
deceive.
Yeah,
Tangle web
tangled
we weave.
web. So yeah, just getting pulled in farther and farther. But Hashem is in control of all of this. And we know he has a plan for Abraham, for Sarah, for their descendants. So we know he's going to protect Sarah. He's going to make sure that nothing happens to her. This is all under control. Whether on the surface, what we read up to this point, it looks like anything but under control. It looks like nothing good could come of it, but we know Hashem has a plan here. So, and that plan unfolds in verse 17. But Hashem afflicted Pharaoh with plagues that were severe, along with his household, over the matter of Sarah, the wife of Abram. What do you make of that? What do you think the plagues were? And does that ring a bell? Like maybe here's a glimpse into a future situation with plagues?
Yeah, it seems to be a theme. Famine, going to Egypt, plagues. Hmm.
Yeah,
We might see this same thing coming up again.
I think we might. Yeah.
So I wonder, well, for one thing, it doesn't say exactly what the plagues were, but
Mm-hmm.
it afflicted Pharaoh and everybody in the house. So it was pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't just the one person. And as we'll see in the next verse, Pharaoh seems to know what the reason for the plagues were, because he called to Avram and he said, "What is this you've done to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you tell me that your wife was your sister?" So how did he know that? How did he associate the plagues or the illness that he was afflicted with Sarai, and how did he figure that out?
That's an interesting question. Later Abraham repeats this thing again, I think, with Abimelech. And God comes to Abimelech and tells him, why these things are happening. But we don't get an indication here that Hashem told Pharaoh why this was happening. So that's a good question. How did he connect the dots to know that? And so he calls Abram in and kind of calls him on the carpet about it. Why did you do this to me? Um, so it's
And
it's quite interesting there.
it's just between you and me, it is an interesting little phrase that we find quite often. What is this you've done to me?
Yes.
Mazot asitali. What is this you've done to me? It comes up quite a bit.
Yes. What have you done to me? Oh. And Pharaoh, I mean, as much as he apparently is attracted to Sarah, he immediately lets her go. So this must have been quite severe, whatever was happening to them, that he says, go, get out, leave, and send him away. And it sounds like it's at the end of the chapter, he sent him away and his wife, and all that was his. So it sounds like, did he keep all the gifts?
Yeah,
Sounds
seems
like
like
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if if the famine was over by that time.
Oh, good question. Yeah, it doesn't say. Just looking ahead in the next chapter, 13, Abram went up from Egypt. There we've got, he descended. And now when we pick up next week, he ascends, goes back up. So,
Yes.
yeah, we see that a lot too. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to bring out in these verses about it's a very strange episode in Abram's life. Uh, Brings up some questions about how to handle ourselves in less than ideal situations.
Yeah, I think that that's what I get out of this little section, is that we do the best we can when we find ourselves in difficult situations. And it might not necessarily be the most ideal way of acting, but it's the best we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that that's something that I try to give myself a little grace on, is that I'm doing the best I can.
Right. I think it's Maya Angelou that said this. You did what you knew, and when you knew better, you did better.
Oh,
And
nice.
I really like that. When we know better, we can only do what we know.
Right.
And again, it might not be, as we learn more, it might not be what we would do later. But that has helped me a lot in the past to look back and say, oh, I could have done that so much better, but I didn't know then what I know now.
Right.
So, I like what you said. We have to cut ourselves a little slack and keep that in mind. And I think I'm going to piggyback on your takeaway. I think that's the big thing to take from this, that we do the best we can in the situation we're in, and that God's in control of it. While it looked kind of bleak and everything, God had a plan. He knew He was going to protect Sarah. He In our commentary it says the plague. One theory on the plague is that He afflicted them with a debilitating skin disease that made cohabitation impossible, thus assuring that Sarah's chastity would be safeguarded. So while it looked kind of not a good situation for Sarah, God was protecting her. He was taking care of it. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Well, I guess if there's nothing else, we will bring this session of In Sarah's Tent to a close, and hope those of you who listen to it later will enjoy it and maybe prompt some questions and thoughts for those who listen to it. So
And I look
Nancy,
forward to next week.
yes, so I'll say good night and see you next time in Sarah's Tent.
Bye.